Up next is our panel session, Data-Driven Decision Making. I'd like to welcome to the stage Madison Chin, the Pastoral Business Analyst at AACO, Ross Staines, Director at Lindavale Cattle Co, Todd Donaldson, Branch Manager at Elders, Michael Wilkes, Director at Wilkes Livestock Co, and our facilitator, Hannah Murray. Thank you.
Now, we had a bugger up and I obviously can't count, so thank you to whoever brought an extra chair. Hi everyone, and thank you very much to the NTCA and all involved in the Tech and Tea today for having me back. I used to work for NTCA and they can't seem to get me out of the shirt. I'm back for another week, so it's great to be back and what a conference we're having so far. I'm really looking forward to this panel today. The Tech and Tea was an initiative that came into being when I was working for NTCA, and it's amazing to see the growth and the strength of the event today. So it's a credit to Jess and everyone involved in the planning and organisation. It's been great and we've got more to come. Now, we did just have a quick introduction, but what I might do to kick things off, and Maddie, you're first cab off the rank, but we might just do a quick powwow to introduce yourself and your background and a little bit about what you do.
My name's Maddie Chin, Pastoral Operations Analyst for AACO, based at Brunette Downs this year. I'm originally from Brisbane and came up north about 3.5 years ago, and yeah, loving it.
I think we're on there. Yeah, g'day everyone, Michael Wilkes. So I run my own consultancy business in nutrition and production consulting. I'm based in southeast of South Australia, so don't hold that against me. But work all over the country directly with producers. And another part of the role that I do is one of my major clients is Nutrient Ag Solutions in their sustainability team. So I work very closely with them in terms of their broader livestock strategy. So you'll hear more from me later on that.
Ross Staines from Lindavale Cattle Co. We're a family-owned business with a few stations in Central Australia operating in Northern Territory and SA.
Yeah, Todd Donaldson, Elders Northwest, we call it. So I look after Julia Creek, Cloncurry and Mount Isa for Elders Rural. Just a pretty cool 186-year-old company called Elders, yeah.
We've heard of it. Thank you all. And look, I want to start things by looking back and looking forward a little bit. And Todd or Ross, maybe you would like to talk to this, but in terms of maybe over the last decade, how have we seen, the impact that data-driven decision-making has had on industry, particularly in the north? What have you seen over the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think there'll be some from AACO, maybe Brumby might remember the initial, I think it was called PAM. It stood for Paddock Assistant Manager or something. I think that, so if we go back to those days and how clunky it was to, some of the software we've got today, I think that'll probably be the biggest. There was never one thing that was going to fit everyone's enterprise. And I think we're getting a bit closer, but there's still some clunky stuff out there. But yeah.
Absolutely. And look, I suppose you're starting to touch on what my next question is, and maybe this is one for Ross as a producer. What are the challenges? Because tech has come a long way, but we've still got a few blocks and a few obstacles out there. What do you think are the biggest ones that we still need to overcome to be able to do some more implementing?
Well, I think one thing with technology is you probably want to take it with a grain of salt and don't see it as a substitution for what you're currently doing. Use it as an addition. The more information you can collect, the better decisions you can make. Doesn't mean you get rid of everything you were doing prior to that. I think you also have to be careful about how much you invest in a certain technology. There's a lot out there. So, and a lot of it's really good, but you still have to be critical when you implement something new.
Absolutely. And Michael, you do a lot of work with clients in terms of supporting them in their tech journey. Can you talk to us about, I guess as a follow-on from that too, combining traditional knowledge and clients of yours that are really traditionally based commercial guys, trying to implement some of that tech? How do you get the balance right? What are your recommendations there?
Yeah, I mean, it builds on what Todd and Ross have said previously. I think not everything fits every business, so it's a matter of tailoring what is going to fit. Just because you have a piece of technology or a platform doesn't mean that people necessarily use it, so they have to be committed to using it. So it's a matter of making sure that people are invested in investment in the technology and then actually doing it. Next thing is that they actually put data into it. That's quite a common thing where, you know, these tools are only as good as the information that you feed into them, and then you need to make intuitive decisions with that, which is where that practical know your country, know how things work piece fits into it. So it's great extra accuracy, extra information, provided you're collecting it, and then what's actually the practical implementation of that, and that's where the intuitive piece comes in. So very useful tools for me as an advisor because I'm not on farm all the time, but at the same time, when we go to make a decision, we want to sense check that with, is this going to be the right thing to do?
So at the end of that, would you say a lot that the approach out there has been guys driving straight in, or are they dipping toes? Like, and because I can see pros and cons for both those approaches. You're either going in full swing and full commit, or you're dipping toes and seeing if you like it and if it fits your business and going from there.
Yeah, I think for those that, I mean, again, broad statement, but for those that have dived in, if they don't back it up with the commitment, then the wheels fall off and then they go, oh, this was rubbish. And it's like, well, actually it wasn't rubbish. We just didn't implement it properly. So I'm probably more of a fan of the gateway approach to, you know, implementing new technologies, get familiar with it. Yep, that's doing a job. What's the next challenge that we're going to work with? Let's move into that. And then, of course, managing the costs to make sure that we're getting an appropriate return on that investment, either in time saving or production.
Thank you. And we'll sort of circle back around to that, but I want to throw one at Maddie. Maddie, as the analyst with AA, such a big company, so many moving parts, you're a lady of metrics, I reckon. What do you think, from your perspective and from what you do in your role, what are some of the most important metrics and where do they steer the business from where you sit?
I think probably a really obvious one is profitability, but I think it's really important to like hone in on it on like an individual profit per AE basis, so you can really measure profit on an individual animal basis. And like I think we look at cost of production, but I don't think you can just look at cost of production alone. I think you have to really look at the drivers behind it when you think about like big cost buckets and how you can, you know, optimize labour, because obviously employment's a big cost bucket. And I think another really important thing is, because our industry is so variable, I don't think you can just look at one metric or compare it to prior year data. I think it's important to look at like a 3-year average or a 5-year average to compare your data with.
So I guess that goes back to the consistency piece in terms of decision making. Like, it's not, you're not looking just in the next 12 months after you're implementing something. You're sort of making a longer term plan to when you can look at 3, 5, 10-year data, and the value really is probably in some of that longer term stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even like when, you know, you look back on the year you've had and you compare it to the year before, like when you do benchmarking and things like that, I don't think you can't just compare it to the year before, because every season's kind of different. And yeah, like you said, it's the same with looking forward. Obviously we can't predict seasonality, so you just got to do what you can.
Yes, definitely. And throwing back to Todd down the end there, Todd, in terms of your business and your clientele, we've talked about productivity, and at the end of the day, we can talk about all of the great things that that we can measure and make decisions on with the aid of tech. But at the end of the day, it all rolls back around to the fact that we need a productive and a profitable business. But in terms of what you're saying, do you think that's still the main driver, or do you think some of these things like animal health, sustainability, welfare, they're really coming into piece as well?
Yeah, I think if you look at where we've come, if we look at, you start the year, you might have 3,000 kilos per hectare of dry matter. Yeah. How do we actually calculate what we're going to do? Like those decisions before this data were probably a little bit more intuitive. They were, you knew your country, you knew your animals. Now we can probably refine that a little bit and get them out, baying on time, to leave, say, 30% by weight in that pasture to make sure that we're continuing. If we go back to the early 2000s when, this dreaded thing called an NLS tag was coming into the cattle industry, and now here we are, 2025, having a conversation about data and decisions based on that really bad thing that was going to happen to the industry. So, and sucked into the sheep people, you're just getting it now. So, yeah, I think we've got to go back to there as well. Like it's, but it's the whole evolution of where we've got to today. Look, companies like AACo and these larger companies making decisions based on what's captured. And it was our cliche, if you can measure it, you can manage it. And I think that's probably the mindset that we need to take into data.
Absolutely. And from that, I guess I want to go into, we've talked about how to get things implemented, and obviously at the end of the day, it still comes back to having the manpower and the commitment to doing it. Ross, in terms of having a business, we're looking at AA on one end, where we've got analysts with a separate role, all sorts of people working in this sort of area of data. In a family business like yours, where you guys are a small man band and doing all the work yourself, when you've got less resource to lean on, do you think that is a challenge for a lot of people in terms of having the time to work that into the 1,000 other things you've got to do in a day?
Yeah, it definitely is. Keeping good data, just records, everything you do, is probably the key. You have to rely on your staff to do that a bit and make sure that, nothing's being not counted. And ensuring that the more data you can keep, the better. It's not something that's very costly. It's just time consuming, you have to stay on it. I'd say the biggest challenge then is when you look at that data and you decide to make a change, you're not going to see a change overnight. Like a lot of these changes, whether it's with your bulls, a management practice, it might take 4 or 5 years before you really start to see some change, but then that change will become exponential, and you will start to see it. So it's really just staying the course and ensuring that you continue on keeping good records and data.
So on that, do you look at it like a 5-year period and have staggered goals in terms of what you think you can achieve next year that's realistic versus the big end goal in the 5-year term, or whatever how many years it is?
Yeah, we definitely do. That's probably more on just on a management the side that we have those yearly goals, and then the data we're probably looking more long term. Where do we need to be improving? Is it whether it's mortality, fertility, or if it's something that's more to do with the feedback you're getting back from the abattoirs?
Yep, and I guess it's maybe one for Michael and possibly Todd as well. Looking at people like Ross who are implementing this on farm, if they're looking for support, if they're looking for help, Michael, obviously from a consultancy point of view, that's a big piece, but also from businesses such as Elders, like where do producers go? I need help with tech, who am I calling? If it's not the tech provider themselves, who's out there in industry? Like where can some of that support come from, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a suite of options. Obviously, are major reseller providers, and I think that's through to private individual consultants, and then also some of the larger consultancy firms that provide more of the broader analytics. And I think that's very much dependent on whether it's that analysis of the long-term rolling 5-year impact of a management change. That might be something that's a larger management change and we need to wait for that, or whether it's a shorter term agronomic, animal health, animal nutrition intervention that we might be sort of making more of a agile decision on. So that depends. Like everything, I think it boils down to the relationships that you have with people and where they are, and who's in your region that's interested and skilled to service you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for our point of view would be, really what is that customer's desire, or what's the actual market? What do they want to achieve from their business? And I think that sort of comes down to us getting to know, what the pain points are. And as far as the tech backup, I think that's it's really cool to see Catherine talk about AI. I think we've got to get our head around a lot of this stuff better than we have already. And I think that's whilst it's probably not an opportunity, it's actually a part of what we used to do for these customers. And we've got to keep up with the times, I guess.
So would you see, obviously NTCA providing a platform like this where providers, producers, stakeholders can actually touch face in terms of, that doesn't happen very often. And Maddie, thinking about you and Brunette, how often would you see some of your providers, obviously probably chatting on the phone, and they get out there when they can, but it's a pretty unique opportunity. But do we think that there's appetite for more of this in industry in terms of NTCA and those sort of groups being able to support producers in accessing some of that support in real time and having those face-to-face opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the obvious opportunity when I think about NTCA is probably providing training opportunities. But I think another big one is they could work with governments, researchers, organisations, and producers to really understand what we actually want. There's no point in going and creating a tool or something if no one's going to use it. So I think the NTCA has probably got a good opportunity to work with everyone and bring everyone together to create a platform to fix an issue that faces producers.
And I think hopefully we're seeing that that communication piece between the paddock and the office is really tightening up now and making a bit more of an impact. If we, I haven't actually got a watch on. Jess will wave at me. Great, keep going. Because I will try and do some questions at the end. But can anyone, I don't know who's best placed for this, but if we're looking at emerging technologies, satellite, AI, blockchain, does anyone feel confident to throw their hat in for that one?
Well, I think the AI, this whole facial recognition thing of, apparently there's been some stock and station agents that might have miscounted cattle onto a truck. There's actually an AI program that'll facially recognise cattle and guaranteed not to miss a count. So I'd be keen to have a look at that. That'll be pretty cool. Not that I've ever made a mistake.
No, of course not.
I think there's a role for blockchain to play with the feedback to the producer, particularly if you, say, are producing feeder steers or not selling to the abattoir directly. There's an opportunity with blockchain, I think, to get that information back through that blockchain and work out, the decisions that need to be made on farm to end up with a better product. There's probably opportunity there for consumers as well to learn more about their product.
Definitely. Michael, anything on that?
Add a bit to that? Yeah, I think there's a myriad of amazing technology out there, be it farm management systems, satellite imagery for pasture monitoring, remote monitoring of livestock through tags and activity monitors and things like that. And then all into your infrastructure monitoring around water and all that sort of stuff. I mean, auto feeders, you name it, there's a gadget. I think the missing gap, and it's not just in the ag tech space, I think it's that how do we drive practice change and the extension and adoption of these things. And I think, well, as you alluded to before, would it be valuable for NTCA to do more of that sort of joining people up? Yes, absolutely. So I think that's, like, we can keep making fancier gadgetry, and that's good. We need to still drive that, but at the same time, let's not lose sight of
The people piece.
implementing the stuff we've already got. So that's a very simple approach, but.
Well, that's it. It sounds complex, but at the end of the day, it's probably, back to some simple systems into how we actually put it into practice. And I guess one for anyone to talk to is, what do you think the future looks like? What would you like to see in the future in terms of tech? And what are you hoping it's going to achieve in the next few years?
I think the exciting thing about technology and innovation is it can go anywhere, like the sky's kind of the limit. I'd love to see an integration of all the platforms we use. I think at the moment we can easily jump into 10 different dashboards. So I'd love to see an integration where we can just look at one system to see all the data we need.
Totally agree. Yeah, that's dead right.
And why do we think that that's still an issue we hear about a lot, is systems not talking to each other? Do you think we're getting close? Are you seeing a bit of progress in that space, or we've still got a long way to go, do you think?
I think there's a few systems out there that are now. I mean, we've had Blackbox speaking here before. For us, that's one system we use to try and bring everything together, so that you're not using all these different systems. But I think connectivity is probably going to be the hurdle that needs to be overcome, and I think we're probably getting closer to that. But I think that'll open up a lot of pathways there.
I think just look at the things that we need to get repaired for some of the producers, and where they've got to go as far as data collection, like readers and indicators and stuff like that. It's pretty frustrating. You get it's all well and good to supply these products, but when something doesn't go right or they need to be repaired, it's just such a process to get it back. So if we had something that was really tough and spoke to everything, it'd be, it's my mother-in-law. It's I think that's what we've got to get to. I think that'll be an ideal situation, and just one person or one company that actually does all our repairs for all this stuff would be really cool.
Oh, well, any techs out there who are looking to start a business, there you go. That's really great. Does anyone want to add anything before we might open it up to the floor? We might just get a couple of mics and see if we've got any questions, hopefully. Otherwise, I'll just start making them up. Has anyone got a question? Tech question? Yep, I see a couple.
Thank you. Loretta from Telstra. I have happened to have recently done some research as part of an MBA on what are the barriers to the adoption in the ag sector for IoT. So love listening to, in fact, it all lines up very, very nicely with what you're saying. But my question is around government subsidies and where they're trying to drive the innovation and adoption of technology. But some of the subsidies, from what I've observed, really don't kind of line up with what is required, or they're quite difficult. I'm just curious to understand your perspective on accessing subsidies to help with the adoption of technology in your business.
I reckon it's a flexibility thing, probably.
No, it's a very good point. I mean, obviously, support to make that jump into the technology is good, but again, it centres how do you actually then incentivise, encourage, educate people to use it. Because like, I had a case in perfect example the other day. A new client had a weigh scale and EID panel reader set up, subsidised under an AgTech fund 2 and a bit years ago, and I mean he uses the scales to draft stock. Panel reader was still in the box. All of his animals, both cattle and sheep, have EID, have had for the last 2 years, and he's just sort of like, oh, what should I do with this? We set it up and got it going. That's great. But there was just no incentive for him to take it out of the box, bolt it onto the scale, and plug it into the machine that he was using already and store the data, let alone make a decision with it. So, it's good to get through that barrier of the investment in the tech, but it still doesn't solve people using the information that it provides. And I don't have an example. I have an answer for that other than providing support.
So to add through to that, do you think in terms of subsidies and those sort of things, rather than it being in the purchase of new tech, because essentially I assume that the producers that want to do that are going to do that on their own anyway, would they be better placed into, for training or for support or for providing some of those things, do you think?
We're going to look at the average age of the actual customer here as well. I think, we're, except for, I'm not speaking for you, Stainsy, but there's, I think the average age is around about 62, 63. So for them to get a subsidy on AgTech, it's, we really have to go back and have a series of conversations with whether that's going to be, right for them. And how do we then implement an education program on the adoption of it? And some of these things, I think the last one opened up for 2 hours and it was gone. Like the government-funded AgTech thing was 2 hours. You couldn't even get an order placed. So I think it needs a little bit of work, but I think we really need to go back to that customer and that age of that customer and where they're at in their enterprise. So it's right for you, young fella.
Yeah, I think the popularity of that last connectivity grant showed the appetite that there is out there to adopt a lot of technology, and it probably also shows that the biggest cost for the biggest barrier is cost for people. A lot of people are holding back until a grant like that comes along. So yeah.
I mean, one strategy that has worked, it's with, I don't know if it's that limited in terms of the tech providers, but there is a tech farm program that Farmers to Founders run. I don't know the intricate details of it, but that has a consultative process in terms of sitting down, working out with the producer what they need, even if they've got another advisor helping them, just a central sort of screening process around, is this going to be the right fit? What support do you need? How is it going to be achieved? And maybe that's a better way to approach it rather than just sort of write the application, I want this bit of gear, it's going to do this job. I mean, that obviously if they're invested in it, then they're going to do it, but a little bit more digging into what and why might help.
Got another question?
Yep. Hello everyone, my name's Isabel Heffernan and I'm a business analyst with the Bilber Group. I use data in my role every day and I appreciate the discussion on the value of data in your individual operations. I was wondering if you could speak to your experience or potentially the value of benchmarking, so data for decision making across your peers, and then even in the room today, such a community of pastoralists all collecting data, how can we maximise that as an industry?
I think benchmarking is absolutely super important, and I think working in like a big business, it's easy to just look at like profitability of the whole business, but I think to really understand our individual like stations or business units, I think we have to do benchmarking. and like we do it once a year, and I think it just allows you to like really hone in, talk to strengths and weaknesses of each individual station. So yeah, I think it is really important.
Yeah, agreed. And seen good success with, albeit even in smaller privately owned enterprises that are part of benchmarking groups or participate in that. Hugely valuable to just kind of take out a lot of that, oh geez, I think this went wrong that year, or the weather did this or that, kind of standardise all of that out of it, assess any changes, but then also there is some of that sort of peer-to-peer comparison. I mean, it's not a competition because everyone's in different enterprises, but it's kind of, if you can get together and discuss it to learn where the differences are and what are the drivers that are good or bad.
Yeah, we've been benchmarking now for well over 20 years, and it's definitely the thing that has had the biggest impact on our business. The importance of being able to compare with another business, put your pride to one side, and actually be able to identify the issues within your herd, your business, your costs, whatever it might be. That's how you make decisions that'll make real change for your business.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to sit on some of the benchmarking stuff from Bush Agri, and I think, it's pretty powerful. It can be sometimes ego-driven, which is, and it's always a competition, no matter who says what. No, I'm just joking. It's really good. I think
I think the other thing that we didn't mention, talking about cost being a barrier, benchmarking is very low cost. It doesn't require any technology apart from maybe a bit of Excel and a bit of paper. So.
I think we're out of time, but I think we got a lot done then. And thank you very much for our panelists. And I would like everyone to give them a quick round of applause. It's great for them to give us our time. And I just want to thank NTCA and all of the sponsors and supporters of the Tech and Tea. It's a really unique platform to be able to get everyone in a room and in the same spot for a couple of days. There's 60-something exhibitors here. Go and see them. There's a predominance of ag tech out there, so take this opportunity to go and see them face to face and make those connections and share a bit of learning. Thank you so much.